Having a history or archaeology qualification isn't a guarantee that you know everything there is to know about your chosen field. It might give you an advantage in identifying a newly discovered artifact or object compared to the average person, but there will be times when all your expertise won't help you explain what you're looking at. Everything you're about to see in this video has something in common. It's something that either partially or totally amazed the experts who found it, and still amazes them now. During 2014, the terrorist group known as ISIS destroyed many cultural treasures in Iraq and Syria for religious reasons, which is a tragedy in terms of lost history. In the process of doing that, though, they accidentally revealed some buried treasures that experts are only now getting the chance to study. One of those treasures is a buried palace in Mosul that is thought to be 2,600 years old. The palace was underneath a mosque that used to stand on a hill overlooking the prophet Jonah's grave. An inscription on one of the palace walls mentioned Esarhaddon, an Assyrian king, which would date the palace to around 680 BCE. Tunnels have been dug into the palace, and so it appears that the terrorists realized the significance of what they found and went looking for archaeological goods to sell on the black market. The site has been back under the control of Iraqi security forces since 2017 and has now been opened up to researchers. The more mysterious sites to be seen include reliefs of winged bull Assyrian gatekeepers, some of which are 20 feet high. Purses, wallets, and handbags sit somewhere between practicality and fashion when it comes to accessories. We need purses because we need to put our valuables somewhere. But as we need to have them, we sometimes make them decorative items to go with our outfits. You'd probably guess that people have been using purses as fashion items for 200 years or more. But would you be surprised if we told you that the habit went back more than 3,000 years? We have proof of that. Here's a purse that was recovered from an archaeological dig site in Leipzig, Germany in 2012. It's almost fossilized, but experts are sure that this is the flap of an ancient handbag. It's decorated with more than 100 canine teeth, which probably meant it wasn't all that comfortable to wear. Having said that, since when was fashion about practicality? The grave that the item was recovered from has been estimated as somewhere between 3,200 and 3,500 years old, so perhaps accessories made from dogs' teeth were all the rage back then. We might be a little closer to solving this next archaeological mystery than we are to getting a positive identification on that handbag. For many years now, archaeologists working in northern hemisphere locations have wondered why rounded stones, most of which had been carved deliberately, were deposited in and around the settlements of so many ancient settlements. Most of the stones come from places where early humanoids gathered, such as Qasem Cave in Israel, which was occupied by Paleolithic humans more than 200,000 years ago. Recent studies have shown traces of animal fat and bone residue, which has led scientists to conclude that the stones were a primitive cooking utensil. Our ancient ancestors would use the rocks to smash animal bones open and extract bone marrow from them for consumption. The shape of the rocks helped to break the bones cleanly and efficiently, without causing excessive damage to the tasty marrow inside them. We're not sure that we'd recommend anyone to try this out in their kitchen at home, but about 250,000 years ago, this must have been the height of sophistication. When a battle, a conflict, or war comes to an end, the occasion is usually marked by the signing of a peace treaty. The Kadesh Treaty, written and signed in the year 1269 BCE, is the oldest such document in the world. This artifact goes by many alternative names, including the Silver Treaty and the Eternal Treaty. But to describe it properly, we should call it the Egyptian-Hittite Peace Treaty. Once these tablets were cast, the conflict between Ramses II of Egypt and Hattusilus of Hittite was over. The treaty is made up of two separate tablets, both of which were found in Turkey in 1906 in Bogazkoy Buyukale, the city that was once the Hittite capital in ancient times. Aside from being the world's oldest recorded peace treaty, it's also the only surviving Near Eastern treaty of any kind that we still have each side's copy of. Despite having had over a century to study the treaty, there's still disagreement between experts over the matter of whether it's a treaty ending a war or a treaty agreeing to a formal alliance, and which of the two sides came to the other to sue for peace. If we don't know now, we may never know at all. In April 2020, a patch of ice in Norway began to melt for the first time in centuries. And as it did so, it revealed ancient treasures that have been hiding below the ice for all this time. Among them is a set of snowshoes for a horse, and what can only be described as a Bronze Age ski. As this discovery is so recent, experts aren't yet sure exactly what they've found, but they think it might be a Viking-era mountain pass that was used by traders many centuries ago. The pass runs through Lendbreen, which is a particularly mountainous region of Norway. As the ice continues to retreat, archaeologists are finding more and more well-preserved artifacts, including leather shoes and arrows in such good condition that their feathers are still attached to them. The bulk of the finds are from roughly 1,000 years ago, although there's some evidence of the path being used during the 1st century and remaining in use until the time of the Black Death in the 14th. There may be more remarkable discoveries to be found in the retreating ice in the near future. In April 1784, a Japanese farmer dug into the ground to repair an irrigation ditch on Shika Island. Almost immediately, he found a series of heavy stones that had been arranged like a box. He didn't know what he was looking at, but he knew it merited further investigation. After calling for help, he lifted the stones away and found the artifact now known as the King of Nasil. The origin of the seal is shrouded in mystery, but it's thought that the golden object was made in ancient China and bestowed upon a Japanese envoy in Emperor Guangwu of Han in the year 57. The name comes from 5 Chinese symbols etched into the seal, identifying it as the seal of the King of Na in the state of Wa, which was the name used for Japan back when it was a vassal state of the Han Dynasty. The envoy must have made quite an impression on the emperor. The seal is made of solid gold that's 95% pure. A precious item like this wouldn't just be handed out to anyone who met the emperor. You've probably never wondered who created the world's first handmade string, but you should, because it's an interesting tale. It might have been made by hands, but they weren't human hands. Researchers working inside a cave in France in early 2020 have found a 1/4-inch long fragment of twisted fibers, and they've been able to prove that it's between 40 and 50,000 years old. That strongly indicates that it was Neanderthals, rather than humans, who made it. And therefore, Neanderthals might have been making cords of string long before human beings mastered the art. We don't have any evidence of human-made string that goes back any further than a 19,000-year-old fragment found in Israel several years ago. This now becomes one of several Neanderthal discoveries made recently, including shell beads, works of art, and birch bark tar, that imply that the hominids were significantly more intelligent than we've given them credit for in the past. If they could make string, it's not out of the question to believe that they might have been capable of building boats. Iraq is a great place to go looking for ancient history. It was once part of Mesopotamia, which was an advanced and influential region of the ancient world. As with most ancient territories, it had its own unique customs and beliefs, and we're yet to fully understand some of them. That's certainly the case with this recently discovered ancient plaza, which appears to have been used to sacrifice animals to a Mesopotamian war god some 5,000 years ago. The god in question was Ningirsu, and hundreds of people would gather at this site to slaughter animals to appease him ahead of times of conflict. They might also have been asking for a better climate, because aside from being a god of war, Ningirsu was also the god of both weather and hunting. Judging by the number of bowls and cups that have been recovered from the site so far, it appears that a large feast followed each sacrificial gathering. What the experts are struggling with is the discovery of a large bronze duck-shaped object right in the middle of the site. They think that it might be a dedication to Nanshi, a water goddess, but it seems out of place here. Earlier on, we suggested that it might be time to accept that Neanderthal people were more advanced than we like to admit they were. We might also have to say the same about Paleolithic people. Just look at the quality of these bison sculptures, which had been hiding in the dark of a cave in France for more than 14,000 years before the discovery in February 2020. Both a bull and a cow bison are represented at the site, which is in the Dodoubert Cave of Ariège. Each of the 2-foot-tall sculptures has been molded by clay taken directly from the cave walls, but came from a time long before humans learned how to fire clay to make statues. Even after such a long time, the hand and fingerprints of the artists are still present on the statues. The jaws, eyes, and finer points of the facial details appear to have been carved using the artist's fingernail. As there would be no reason to create these sculptures other than a love of art, it's probably time to start believing that the people of the Paleolithic era were, to an extent, cultured and civilized. Right at the start of 2020, a picture of petrified wood in Arizona, USA went viral across the internet. The wood had been waiting for a very long time for the world's attention. It's close to 225 million years old. The wood isn't just petrified, it's been through another chemical process. It's been nicknamed opal because it was initially thought to have been opalized, but it would be more accurate to classify it as agate, which is a type of quartz. Opal and agate are both minerals with a silica base, but agate has a crystalline structure that's clearly visible in the popular photographs. You wouldn't get that from opalization. If you were ever inclined to go looking for it, you'd find it in the Crystal Forest area of the Petrified Forest National Park in the state. It's thought that the wood absorbed silica from volcanic ash more than 200 million years ago, which has slowly crystallized over the course of the time that followed. Many of us associate olive oil with Italy and Italian cooking, and that's not without good reasons. The practice of using olive oil has gone on in the countries, and thanks to a discovery made in June 2018, we now know that it started 700 years earlier than we previously believed. That's because traces of the substance have been identified inside a Bronze Age ceramic jar in Sicily that was made 4,000 years ago. The archaeologists who found the jar noted that it had an unusual shape compared to other jars of the era, and so they sent it for further scientific study. That's when linoleic and oleic acid were both confirmed to be present, the telltale signs of olive oil. We know that the Italians picked up the habit of using olive oil from the ancient Greeks, but it now seems that the habit was picked up 7 centuries before we thought the first such trade happened. While it's natural to assume that the olive oil in this jar was used for cookery, we can't be certain. Olive oil was used for a variety of other purposes in ancient times, including medicine and fuel for burning incense. Here's a statement that might be controversial. The Chinese might have discovered the Americas 3,300 years ago, long before Christopher Columbus undertook his epic voyage. The finding hasn't been substantiated or confirmed just yet, but researcher and expert John Ruskamp is absolutely positive that he's identified pictograms from China's ancient Shang dynasty etched into rocks in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. He sees them as proof that the Chinese were exploring the continent long before Europeans arrived. A large boulder in Albuquerque, New Mexico might be especially significant. It appears to contain glyphs that tell the tale of a Chinese man honoring his ruler by sacrificing a dog to his honor. We know that dog sacrifices were common in China 2,000 years ago as a mark of respect. Another set of symbols, found by the shore of California's Little Lake, describes a boat arriving on the water. The marks are weathered enough to suggest that they've been there for a very long time, but the difficulties involved in accurately dating markings on rock mean that it may never be possible to prove John's astounding claims. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!